Hey, everybody. A lot of you have been asking about buying plane tickets. So, and what some advice on which tickets to buy, where to buy. I know some of you probably have done this many times, or somebody in your family has, but others, I know this might be your very first flight, and probably at least the first time you've bought tickets. So, instead of trying to send everybody an email, I thought I'd just kind of make a quick video and I'm not going to really do it live. I just spent about an hour doing a bunch of searches and I took some images. So I'm going to kind of fake it a little bit on the PowerPoint. But these are, again, I'm recording this April 3rd, about 11 o'clock at night. And so these are as of April 3rd, again, about 10 o'clock tonight. So again, the prices may be a little different tomorrow. Again, Tuesday sometimes is a kind of a cheat day for travel agents. They could go up, they could go down. But anyway, I thought I'd go through and show you some things. And the bad news is, as some of you may already notice, the prices are unbelievably high this year, and that's kind of across the board. I do have some options that I'm going to show you towards the end that might help a couple of you, but may not help all of you. And, but we'll see. This is the first year, not that you care, because you don't really care what we did in the past. You just care what we're doing this year. But in the past, we used to do a group ticket for everybody. And it kind of, you could opt out of it, but essentially it was assumed everybody did the group ticket. And at one time it was a better deal because we could lock in prices pretty early. So if gas prices went up or things like that, we were locked in. But usually a student that really wanted to could sometimes beat the group ticket price. Last year they switched to pretty much the assumption was you were going to buy your own ticket, but we still had the group ticket option. I think about half the students did it. This year, Atlanta basically said, we're not going to do the group ticket anymore. I actually kind of wish we were still doing it, except the prices are so high. We probably actually, as a group, we probably would end up having to raise our prices here at the last second. So some of you may have still been able to find some deals, but I'm not gonna lie, I've paid the most I've ever paid for a ticket to Edinburgh. I've paid for other stuff, but I've never paid as much as I paid this year to Edinburgh. Although I'm seeing a few prices that are a little bit cheaper than what I paid. And I know the other two professors, same thing, because we've all bought our tickets and we all have paid more than we've ever paid. And I'm hearing the same things in other programs. It's just a rough year. Airlines are still recovering from COVID. Fuel prices are through the roof right now. And again, every time prices go up on one thing, it has, you may have gone grocery shopping and noticed food prices are way high. And again, that's tied in with fuel prices and other things. Economies are rough. So there's a lot of things hitting right now. Plus, everybody is traveling this summer. So again, they can raise their prices and still make money. So anyway, it's just kind of a nexus of several things hitting at once. Let me switch. Let me share my screen. Okay. Hopefully you're seeing the PowerPoint. And if you've watched any of my PowerPoints, you probably have remembered this slide. This is actually it's couple of my former students from a few years ago. So let me go ahead and talk a little bit about buying plane tickets. And again, like I said, this may be insulting to a couple of you who've done this many times. First off, make sure I do a lot of this on my phone. Make sure that you have a calendar, whether you have a physical calendar or pull up your calendar on your phone, because sometimes, especially if you're going to play a little bit with the dates, I mean, sometimes come in a day earlier. Of course, you got to get a hotel room if you do that, but can play with the prices and stuff. So again, I get mixed up sometimes. So just make sure you have a good calendar and you got the dates written down in front of you. So again, for session 1, you're arriving on the 21st of May. That's a Sunday, and you would be leaving, unless you're staying longer on your own. That's different. But for the program, we're done that Friday, June 2nd. And then for session 2, again, you are arriving Sunday, June 4th, and you would be leaving Friday, June 16th. Now, remember, flying over from the United States to Edinburgh, it is a 5-hour difference. And so you're kind of flying against time. And so usually it takes 2 days. In other words, you'll leave maybe 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 10 o'clock at night from, say, Atlanta, you would arrive the next morning. Or you might leave again 10 o'clock at night and arrive 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So usually it's the next day, but coming back, it's almost always the same day because you're kind of flying with time. So like you'll leave Edinburgh at 10 a.m. and you might arrive in Atlanta at 3 p.m. Although it's really 8 p.m. Edinburgh time. Again, it's just one of those weird quirks of way time works that it feels like it's a shorter flight. So again, remember that, again, you're really leaving on Saturday to arrive on Sunday. And when I go through the examples, I'll have that date. Some considerations, and again, these are just kind of my advice. You don't have to necessarily follow these. And I do have some caveats here. I try, when I buy a ticket, I try to do only one airline. Now, again, sometimes those prices, I'll go with the cheap one. The reason I say that is because you're almost always going to have to do one stop. It's hard to get a direct flight like Atlanta. Edinburgh doesn't have as many direct flights. It's not as big of a city as, say, London or Paris. So usually you're always flying to New York, then Edinburgh, or flying to Paris, then Edinburgh, or London, then Edinburgh. And it kind of depends on which airline. Delta's always out of Atlanta. British Airways is out of London. KLF is out of Amsterdam. Lufthansa is out of Frankfurt. So anyway, you're almost always going to have at least one stop. So let's say you're flying Delta Atlanta to London, and then you have United Airlines from London to Edinburgh. Well, if that Delta flight is late and you miss the United Airlines flight, United Airlines doesn't care. They're like, you missed a flight, you need to buy another ticket. But if it's both Delta and Delta's late, they will get you on another flight because it was their fault. It wasn't your fault. But if you're switching airlines, then if you miss your flight, there's no replacement. You just have to buy a new ticket. And I've had to do that before. It's rare. I don't want to freak you out. But I try to, if I can, I try to keep it all one airline. But sometimes the prices just require you to do two airlines. And again, if you can do direct flights, that's great. I didn't see any direct flights that are anywhere affordable, so that's probably not going to be much of an option. I think Dr. Muth, who's teaching on session 2, I think she got a direct flight. But the rest of us, it's probably going to be one stop. If you get 2 stops, that's fine. I wouldn't go beyond 2, like flying to New York, then New York to London, then London to Edinburgh, because again, every airline, every flight is another flight that could get canceled, run late. You really, that's a lot of, so 2 flights is kind of what I try to limit myself. In fact, when I search, I tend to just say 1 stop. I don't do the 2 stops. And I saw one when I was doing some searches. It was a cheap flight, but it was literally 5 flights to get from Atlanta to Edinburgh. And it was like 26 hours. It's crazy. So don't do that. Layover time, that's again, like, so if you're flying to, let's say, Atlanta to New York, and then you have to go to New York to Edinburgh, the time you're in New York, that's your layover time. It's usually they're going to be a little while. And you don't want it to be too long. I mean, it can be. You just, you don't want to be 15 hours. That's a long time to sit at an airport. But you don't want it to be too short. Again, it's so tempting. You're buying tickets and you got a good price and you're like, okay, I fly to New York and 45 minutes later, I'm flying to Edinburgh. But remember those times, that's wheels up and wheels down. So again, it takes a while to get on a plane and it takes them a while to get out, and then they take off. That's the time that's listed. And then they say they land at New York. Well, it might take a while for them to actually get to the gate, and then you got to get off the plane. Every so often, you got to go through security again. Not usually, but sometimes. And there's a lot of people, and you got to figure, it might be able to cross the airport. I've even had to get out of a building and go to another building. And again, that 45 minutes is gone like that. And that's assuming the plane's on time. And if it's running, so I definitely not less than an hour. And I personally, I like a couple hours. My wife, she likes it a little tighter. And when it works, it's great. When it doesn't work, but I'm happy with 2-3 hours in between. I just pick up a book, I read, get some food. And again, that time actually goes pretty quick because again, it takes a while to get off the plane, then it takes a while to load the plane, So again, give yourself a little bit of buffer there. But again, that's totally up to you, but that's my advice. Always check, when you go to an airline, especially because you guys are going to be staying a couple of weeks, you're going to have a carry-on, like a backpack, and then you're also going to have a suitcase, or most people will have a suitcase. Some people manage to shove everything into, and so you're allowed to carry the backpack onto the plane, but your luggage, what they say, they check it. That means they're going to tag it and put it on the bottom of the plane. And you won't see that bag again until you get to your destination, and then it'll be on, that little conveyor belt. Hopefully, as often it doesn't make it. They're pretty good though. Don't worry about that. And so nowadays they do charge you for that checked bag. They used to be just considered part of the price. Now and every year it gets a little more expensive. So remember, when you're looking at that price, just know there's going to be a checked bag price, and it might be as much as $100. In fact, that's probably what it's going to be. And that's going to be both ways. Again, they nickel and dime you on these things. So just, kind of keep that in mind as you're budgeting, because know there's going to be a checked bag price. This is where some of you may disagree, but go economy. That means the cheapest seats. That's usually in the back of the plane. Because you know what? I don't care if you're in first class or bottom class. And by the way, when we did group tickets, it was a cheap route. Because guess what? That plane is one thing. Those first class people, they're not getting there any quicker. Yeah, their seats are a little bigger. It's a little nicer. Yes, they get a little more food. But in the end, they're still just on the plane, and they're still getting there at the same time. So my opinion, go cheap. Do not blow money getting second class or business class or first. Again, unless you're rich. If you're rich, go for it. But for most of us, go economy. Don't even pretend to do otherwise. I know, like, people like Rick Steves, the professional traveler, he says the same thing. Go economy. You're getting there at the same time. And stay away from all the bells and whistles. They'll say, oh, you want this, you want that, I mean, again, sometimes, guaranteed, the planes, if it does get canceled, sometimes you can pay a little extra money and you're guaranteed they'll give you another ticket. I tend not to do any of that personally. Every so often I wish I had. It's kind of like getting insurance when you buy a camera. I'm always like, or buy a phone. I'm like, I'm not going to get the insurance. But they'll kind of nickel and dime you all this, choose your seat for $50 extra. That's, and just go again, keep this as cheap as you can. You want to save your money for the trip. Anyway, those are just some of my considerations. You don't have to do any of that. But these are just things I would consider. So where do I get tickets? I tend to use Expedia is usually my main option. I do have an account. I sign in. And by the way, I did a search. They're all kind of the same, but I'm going to walk through Expedia, but they're all working. They're all the same, even, So again, you go to Expedia or any other site, make sure you click on flights. And of course, you're going to type in where you're flying from and where you're going to. For now, I'm going to say Atlanta. That's the most obvious choice for us, but we're going to play at the end with this. And that it might be worth flying from somewhere else. And again, it's just going to be ATL is your, that's the abbreviation. If you just type in ATL, it'll come up Atlanta. That's the official abbreviation for Atlanta, the international airport. And then EDI, that's the official abbreviation for Edinburgh. That's your ultimate destination. And of course, for session one, we're going to do session one, and then I'll do session two very quickly. And good news, session two, your tickets are actually a little bit cheaper than session one. So session one is a bigger group, and they're doing a couple of things that session two isn't doing, and vice versa. The one advantage session two seems to be getting is their prices are a tad cheaper right now. So anyway, so for session one, again, you're going to be leaving on Saturday, the 20th of May. And again, unless you're going early, but that's between you and because the hostel isn't available till Sunday. So if you are going early, you got to make your own reservations, and that's totally fine. You do have that option, but if you're going officially as part of the program, and you want to arrive with the program, you leave on the 20th, you'll get there to the 21st on the Sunday. And then again, you're leaving to go home unless you're staying long, Friday, June 2nd. So you pick your two dates, you click search. These are the options, and actually these prices are a tiny bit better than what I paid. The 1511 seems to be kind of the main for session one. That seems to be kind of the main one that keeps coming up. There's one or two flights that show up as 8:25 a.m. Others are showing up at 10 a.m. They used to be flights that came in the afternoon. There doesn't seem to be those options. I know they have limited the amount of flights to Edinburgh over the last year or so. Because I know a couple of my flights last year got canceled, and I had to get new flights because they said we're not doing as many flights to Edinburgh lately. So again, that's another reason why these are so high. There's just less flights going into Edinburgh, so they can charge more. Which is kind of one thing that is good is that it looks like most people will be getting in the mornings. Now we won't have our rooms ready yet, and I'll be there already. I'm actually going to be there a couple of days early. But that actually gives us almost a whole extra day to kind of adjust and get things situated. We'll probably do a scavenger hunt for those who are there early. So actually, I know the professors are actually a little bit excited that students might be showing up early, because usually students don't arrive till 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So despite the prices, that's actually good news. But so again, if you're looking at here, you might think, which one's the better one? 1511 is a little cheaper, although it is a long flight. I mean, you're leaving 11 a.m. in the morning, and it's almost 24 hours where you arrive. The other two are a little bit shorter. So I clicked on, just to give you a sense, I clicked on KLM. And again, when you click on it, you kind of get a sense of what you're getting with it. These are both economy. Again, you can pick your seat for a fee. They'll pick it for you. I don't think there's a need to do that. That's again, notice the check bag. They are charging for the check bag. It used to be $25, and it was $50. Now they're charging $100. Anyway, so that's essentially, again, so if you got price drop protection for $73, don't do all that. And then you got to pick a returning flight. So let's say you pick that flight, and now you got to get a flight to come home. Most of them are going to be they're in that price. So it's again, that's what it means by +0. That means yes, you search for a returning flight, and the price was $15.56. That includes both flights. But there may be other flights that you can do for a slight, like $10 more. You can get certain flights. So again, you got two that are included. They're both leaving at 12:05 to 4 o'clock. So again, notice that's a direct flight, by the way. It's nonstop. That's a pretty good deal. So that's the one I would do. I would just do one of those top two. And so it's one airline because it's nonstop. There's no stops. And again, notice, I mean, it looks like it's only a 4-hour flight. It's really almost 9 hours because you're flying with time. But coming back is usually a little bit better. So I would probably do that one. I don't really see any need to pay $10 extra to come home 4 hours later. So those are actually pretty good options coming back. So you would click on that. If you decided to choose that, you would click on that. They would give you a chance to kind of review it just to make sure that, and again, both of these. Now, by the way, the one I picked, this is just a random one. It does have 2 stops going over. That's actually not great. You really, again, you'd rather have one that only has 1 stop. I just randomly picked this one. So again, it's showing you, you just get a chance to check out. And I won't go through the whole thing. It's pretty much just checking out like anything. But the big thing, just keep in mind, and when you are buying a plane ticket, you do have to list your name exactly. I should have had this ready to go. I forgot to do this. Oh, it should be exactly what's on your passport. Like for me, David James Nelson is on my passport. So when I buy a ticket, it needs to match my passport. Now you may not have your passport yet. It may still be coming, but hopefully you remember, usually it's just your full name, but it does need to match. I'm trying to see what I got stuck in here. Oh, it's my identification for going to the archives. I'm a nerd. But anyway, because this is, once you start flying and going over, this is your ID. It's not your driver's license, not your student ID. This is everything once you travel. And so, and in fact, when you get to the airport, this is what you'll take. They'll stick this in a machine, they'll scan it, and that's how they know that it's you. And you don't really get a physical ticket anymore. You go to the airport, you use your passport, then they print out your ticket. So again, it does need to match up. It needs to be obviously be you, and then the names need to match up. So you do need to do this part kind of carefully. You don't actually have to put in the number on the passport, but you do have to make sure your name's, so don't use your nickname. Like I'm David Nelson, but I tend to sign Dave, Dave. I can't do that on the ticket. I did that one time and I managed to get on the plane, but just barely. So make sure it's exactly the same name, and get your birth date, all that right. Everything else is self-obvious, but just that's the tricky part, because that has been a problem. When we did group tickets, sometimes the person buying the group tickets, and it wasn't me, would mistranscribe the name, or again, they were using a nickname and didn't realize that was a nickname, and that has been an issue sometimes. Okay, so it really if you're comfortable, I mean, you can do this in 5 minutes. I mean, it's really quick. It's amazing how easy it is to buy a ticket. The biggest thing is just the price and making sure you're getting the dates right. So other sites you can check, Kayak's a pretty good one. I mean, again, I tend to use Expedia, and there wasn't too much of a difference on prices this time. But sometimes it is worth checking other sites before you actually purchase. So again, I just did a quick search on Kayak. It's been about an hour and a half now. And again, you can see that 1511, same price that we saw a moment ago. There is one nice one, $9.99. That looks like a great deal. But again, look at how many stops you're doing. And again, you're talking over 24 hours flying. That is a lot. And it's not only is a bunch of stops, it's also several airlines. Again, if your money's real tight, you might be tempted to take that one. I wouldn't. But that's just me, because it is so long, and there's a lot of stops there. So I would be very, very careful with that. And it's also coming back too. But again, so sometimes don't, look at the details. This one, I'd probably do the Virgin Airlines one, which is really run for Delta. So I did a second search on Kayak where I told it to only give me one stop instead of a bunch of stops. And again, 1511 was a good price. But then there was also this 1462, which is actually a slightly better price. One airline but look at those details, 30 hours, almost 31 hours. It might be worth it to you to do that. But again, you're leaving Friday at 8:30 p.m. Friday, and you're not arriving until Sunday, 8:05 a.m. Probably won't do that one. So again, you do need to look at those details a little bit. But so again, to me, saving, $40, $50 isn't really worth a whole extra day of flying. So be very careful. And again, so that 1511 is looking pretty good now. Hopper is another one. I think this one you have to do on your phone, because I started doing it and it said, no, download the app. So again, if you have a phone, you can download Hopper. There's a couple others you can use. Skyscanner is another one. This one is just kind of an aggregator that just kind of looks at a lot of different sites. Again, you're seeing about the same prices if you notice. Again, all arrive in the mornings, 10:05 or 8:25. So again, for right now, at least for session 1, these are the prices. If you already got your tickets, hopefully you beat the prices, and there's always a chance they might get cheaper, but I just don't know. And it's April 3rd for session 1. You're leaving May 20th. These prices, sometimes they can go down as you get closer because they're desperate to sell the tickets, or they can go up. So personally, I'd go ahead and I would get the ticket within the next week, just because in fact, some of these you'll see there's already saying, 3 tickets left, 5 tickets left. Just be careful. So, okay. So, one last option I forgot to mention, and that is going directly to the airline. Since we're in Georgia, Delta is the most obvious choice, but check all the airlines, KLM, Lufthansa, American Airlines, United Airlines, just check all of them. Just to, go directly to their sites. Sometimes they're running deals. Again, this is Delta, same price. That 1511 is the one that keeps popping up, isn't it? So, the nice thing about going through Delta is you're going, you're there's no middle person, right? I mean, that's never been an issue. In fact, I had a flight last summer. I did through Expedia. I had a flight last summer get canceled, and it was a problem. And I called Expedia, and they actually took care of it for me. So that ended up not being a problem. But sometimes if there's an issue, it's nice that your ticket comes directly from the airline. But, okay, So that was for session one. I won't spend as much time session two because it's the same info. But nonetheless, for session two, again, you would actually be leaving on June 3rd, the Saturday, and then to arrive on Sunday, June 4th, and then you would be going back June 16th to go home. Sorry. I feel like I've been sorry. I had a little brain. I kind of went nuts in my brain. I kept thinking, I feel like I've been doing June 16th this whole time. I was double checking to make sure I wasn't doing June 16th for session one. I wasn't. I was kind of freaking out for a minute. Sorry. I wish I could edit this part out. Forget I had that little brain fart for a minute there. Okay. June 16th is your return date. Okay. Sorry. I kind of went nuts for a minute there. So already, again, this is just Expedia. You can see your prices are already a little bit cheaper. I think partly because it's a little bit early, but it is a little bit cheaper at the moment. So 1,300, 1,318. Now that 1,318, although I like my Canada, but that one's again, that's a 32-hour flight. You're actually leaving on Friday, so maybe don't get sucked into that one. But 1361, that's actually looking like a pretty good flight, even though it is multiple airlines. You got another 1361, that's all Delta. That's not too bad of a price. Now, something you might want to think about, and this won't apply for everybody, but sometimes playing with where you leave from can make a difference. Now, I live just outside of Tallahassee. Now, we have an airport, but it's so expensive to fly out of Tallahassee, it's not worth it. I usually fly out of Atlanta, and that's what I'm doing this year. But Jacksonville is just about 2.5 hours to my east. It's actually closer than Atlanta for me. And Orlando is about 3.5 hours from me. Again, about the same distance to Atlanta. Sometimes that's an option. Now, if somebody's in North Georgia, Orlando's probably pretty far away, but Jacksonville may be an option for anybody that's in central or southern Georgia. That might be worth the drive. So again, looking at Jacksonville for session two, you're seeing some pretty cheap, you're seeing, some slightly cheaper prices. Now, again, for session two, it's not that much cheaper than just flying out of Atlanta, but it's a little bit. So if you're living in, say, Valdosta, or living in Brunswick, or maybe even Bainbridge, it might be worth driving over to Jacksonville to fly out of, instead of flying out of Atlanta. In fact, these are pretty decent looking flights. So I went back to session one, and I did get the end date right. Like I said, for a minute, I thought I was putting in the wrong end date. So for session one, look at that. Again, Jacksonville, one stop, one airline, Delta, $400 cheaper. Fine. And again, there may be some weird thing here, but I don't think there is. It is $400 cheaper. It's the same airline. The downside is, by the way, as I'm looking at this, is it's a 58-minute layover in New York. That breaks one of my personal rules of that's too quick of a layover. Because if the flight's late, but it is the same airline, they might be able to make it up to you. So that one's very tempting. This is where I say, it is tempting. I do break my rules sometimes when I see a really low price. $400, that might be worth it because it's one airline, but 58 minutes is a really, really tight stop. That's tight stop. Again. But even the 1405s, again, if you live not that far away from Jacksonville, I mean, it might be worth $100 or $200 cheaper. So again, and I think Charlotte's another option for northern Georgia. Think about Charlotte. Sometimes playing, with the dates a little bit, like if you're already planning to come early, play with those dates a little bit. If you're already planning on staying a day or two late, play with those dates a little bit. Sometimes flying on the Sunday is cheaper than a Monday. I know for most of you, you're not able to play with those dates, but sometimes that can help. Anyway, I hope I made things easier. I might have just given you too many details to think about. If you have any questions, hopefully you should have my emails already because I've been sending a couple of emails out. We do have the Facebook page. I think about half of session 1 has joined it, and then I have a separate one for session 2. I think only a few have joined it. But again, check your emails. I sent links to both of the Facebook pages for each session. And again, any questions, shoot me an email or message me on Facebook. Other than that, I think I talked a lot more than I thought I would. Good luck. If you haven't bought tickets already, good luck buying them. And again, I do apologize how expensive they are, because I know I talked to a couple of you a couple of months ago about airline tickets. And yeah, I was not expecting the airline tickets to be this expensive. And they weren't actually back in January. They were a lot cheaper at the time. I wish I bought my ticket back in January. Okay, that's enough. Talk to you guys later.